You've been lied to your entire life. Every movie, every book, every motivational speaker told you that your ultimate goal is to be happy. But what they didn't tell you, what they couldn't tell you, is that happiness is not the goal. It's a side effect, and if you chase it directly, you'll never find it. Imagine spending your entire life trying to grab smoke. That's what chasing happiness feels like. And then, one day, someone like Nietzsche shows up and drops a truth so brutal, so raw, it shatters everything you thought you knew. He says, you must seek power, not happiness.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
What does that even mean? Power. Are we talking about domination, control, money, status? No. Nietzsche wasn't talking about corrupt power. He meant power over yourself. Power to create, to endure, to transform. He called it the will to power the fundamental drive of all life. Not to be comfortable, not to be content, but to overcome, to grow, to rise above what you were yesterday. And that's terrifying, because it means you can no longer blame the world for your smallness. It means you must choose to become something greater or fade into nothingness. We all want to feel good. That's natural. But Nietzsche challenges that desire. He asks, what if your obsession with feeling good is what's making you weak? Look around. So many people are addicted to comfort, scrolling endlessly, avoiding challenge, numbing pain. But comfort is not peace. It's stagnation. And stagnation is death in slow motion. Nietzsche's truth is that life is suffering, and the only way to rise above it is to embrace the suffering and use it as fuel. Not to avoid the flame, but to step into it and forge yourself. Picture this, a man alone in the mountains, freezing, starving, facing the void. That was Nietzsche. Physically ill, mentally tormented, spiritually awakening. And in that solitude, he realized that life is not meant to be easy. It's meant to be meaningful, and meaning doesn't come from happiness. It comes from struggle, from the battle, or from becoming who you were born to be. He didn't want you to smile all day. He wanted you to become a warrior of the soul. And that begins by asking, what am I willing to suffer for? If you're not willing to suffer, you're not willing to grow. And if you're not willing to grow, you're not truly alive. Nietzsche said, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. That why is your power, your mission, your purpose. And if you don't have it, life will crush you. You'll be thrown around by external forces, jobs, relationships, politics, trends, because you have no inner spine, no core. But when you have power within, nothing outside can break you. You become unshakable. Not because you're numb, but because you've chosen your pain. Happiness is fragile. It depends on circumstances. But power is different. It's internal. It's cultivated. It's earned. You don't find it, you build it. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, you're building it. Every time you face your fear instead of running, you're building it. Every time you say, I'll keep going, after the world tells you to quit, you're building it. That's the will to power. And it's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you truly are once all the lies have burned away. Nietzsche didn't believe in universal morality. He believed in personal destiny, that each person has their own path, their own mountain to climb. And most people never even start. They're too scared, too addicted to validation, too focused on being liked. But the truth is, you must be willing to be hated to be free. You must be willing to stand alone, to be misunderstood, to walk away from the herd and into the wilderness of your own soul. That's where power begins. In solitude, in silence, in suffering. Ask yourself this: if happiness was removed from the equation, what would you still be willing to do? What would you still fight for, create for, live for? That's your path. And once you find it, you'll realize that happiness was never the point. The point was power. Not over others, but over your own weakness, over your own fear, over your own excuses. Nietzsche saw the modern world as sick. He called it a world of last men, people who want nothing but comfort, who avoid risk, who laugh at greatness because they're too afraid to chase it. He hated that. He wanted something higher. He dreamed of the Übermensch, the overman. Not a superhero, but a human who transcends mediocrity, who creates his own values, who doesn't beg life for meaning but creates meaning through his actions. That's who you're meant to become. Not a seeker of pleasure, but a creator of power. And power doesn't mean you won't suffer. It means your suffering will serve a purpose. You'll lift heavier burdens, face deeper fears. But you'll also experience something most people never taste: the ecstasy of transformation, the joy of becoming, the sacred fire of knowing you're evolving, not decaying. Because every moment of discipline, every act of courage, every step into the unknown is a step toward your higher self. Nietzsche once said, "Become who you are, not who they want you to be, not who society rewards, but who you are at your core." And the only way to become that person is to stop chasing happiness and start seeking power. Real power. The kind that can't be taken from you. The kind that lives in your decisions, your habits, your truth. So ask yourself now, what part of you have you been betraying in the name of comfort? What dreams have you buried because they were too painful to pursue? What truth have you silenced because it wasn't safe to speak? The will to power demands you dig those things up, face them, live them, even if it costs you everything. Because the cost of not doing it is your soul. And here's where it gets real. You will lose people. You will be judged. You will face resistance. But Nietzsche would say, good. That means you're alive. That means you're on the path. If no one is resisting you, you're not moving. If no one is rejecting you, you're not creating something new. You're just fitting in. And fitting in, for Nietzsche, was death. He believed that true life begins at the edge, at the limit, where you are forced to confront your deepest self, not with fake positivity, but with raw, brutal honesty. Do you have the courage to stand there? To look into the abyss and not turn away? Because the abyss, your fear, your pain, your doubt is not your enemy. It's your mirror. And if you stare long enough, you'll begin to see not a monster, but a creator, a force, a god in embryo. And that's the final truth Nietzsche wanted us to see. That we are not meant to be happy sheep, grazing in safety. We are meant to be creators of the future. Painful, powerful, dangerous creators. Not because we destroy everything, but because we destroy the lies, the illusions, the masks, and in their place we build truth. You must seek power, not happiness. Because happiness is fleeting, but power real, inner power transforms everything. It gives you the strength to love deeply, to work relentlessly, to live fully. Even when life is cruel. Especially when life is cruel. Because in the end, it's not about feeling good. It's about becoming great. And now I ask you the only question that matters. Are you willing to give up happiness, to gain the power to become who you truly are? You're still here. That means something inside you is stirring. That means you're not satisfied with the shallow answers anymore. The idea that you were born to merely chase pleasure, avoid pain, and call that a life it doesn't sit right with you. Deep down, you sense there's more. And Nietzsche is standing at the edge of your consciousness, whispering the dangerous truth. You were not born to be happy. You were born to become, and becoming is war. A war against who you were, who you pretend to be, and who the world expects you to remain. Let's go deeper. Most people live in a loop. Wake up, work, scroll, sleep, repeat. Their emotions are dictated by notifications. Their self-worth is measured by likes. Their purpose, undefined. They chase happiness through consumption, more stuff, more entertainment, more comfort. But consumption is not creation. It's not power. It's dependency. And Nietzsche knew that dependency kills the soul. He said, freedom is the will to be responsible for ourselves. That's the first real step toward power, to stop blaming, to stop waiting, and to take full ownership of your existence. But what does that ownership look like? It means confronting the truth that no one is coming to save you. Not your parents, not your partner, not society. You are your own savior or your own destroyer. And that realization either breaks you or awakens you. Because now you must choose. Do you continue to float in the current of comfort? Or do you fight upstream toward the source of your own power? Nietzsche believed that most people are terrified of freedom, real freedom. The kind that strips away excuses and exposes your potential. Why? Because it forces you to act, to create, to suffer. And suffering is unavoidable on the path to greatness. But here's the paradox. When you embrace suffering, when you choose it consciously, it becomes a source of energy. It sharpens you. It deepens you. It elevates you. Power is not the absence of pain. It is the ability to transmute pain into purpose. We often hear people say, do what makes you happy. But Nietzsche would scoff at that. He would ask, what if what makes you happy is keeping you weak? What if your comfort zone is your cage? What if your obsession with safety is preventing your evolution? Think about it. When have you grown the most? When everything was easy, or when you were pushed to your limits, broken down, and forced to rebuild yourself from the ground up? There is a sacred violence in transformation. You must destroy who you were to become who you could be. Nietzsche called this the process of becoming your own God, not in arrogance, but in responsibility. You create your values. You define your meaning. You build your reality. Not because it's easy, but because no one else can do it for you. That's what the Übermensch represents, not perfection, but authorship. Not happiness, but sovereignty. Let's talk about morality. Nietzsche didn't believe in good and evil as absolutes. He believed in power and weakness. He saw traditional morality, especially the kind built on guilt, shame, and obedience, as a tool of the weak to control the strong. He called it slave morality, and he challenged us to rise above it, not by becoming cruel, but by becoming conscious. To examine every belief we inherited and ask, is this mine? Or is this a chain I've been told to wear? That's where the real journey begins. When you stop living by inherited scripts and start writing your own. It's terrifying, it's lonely, but it's real. And in that reality, you find something rare: integrity. The alignment of your thoughts, actions, and values. Not borrowed values, created ones. That's power. The power to stand alone, and to act without applause, to live without permission. People will try to pull you back. They'll say you've changed, that you're selfish, that you're obsessed. But Nietzsche would ask, is it selfish to refuse to live a lie? Is it obsession to pursue your highest potential? Or is it simply the cost of evolution? Because make no mistake, evolution has a cost. You'll lose friends, you'll lose comfort, you'll lose certainty. But what you gain is everything. There's a moment in every powerful life where the old world dies, where the familiar burns, where stability crumbles. And in that chaos, a new self begins to form, not polished, not perfect, but real, alive, awake. That's the moment Nietzsche lived for. The moment the mask falls off and you meet your raw, unfiltered soul. He called it amor fati, the love of fate, not tolerating life, loving it, all of it, even the suffering, especially the suffering, because it's shaping you into something immortal. Have you ever thanked your pain? Not just endured it, but truly thanked it. That's Nietzsche's challenge, to stop seeing hardship as punishment and start seeing it as preparation. For what? For becoming, for rising, for creating a life that is not borrowed, but built. Pain is not the enemy, it is the forge. And the fire doesn't lie. Let's talk about legacy. Most people want to be remembered. But Nietzsche would ask, remembered for what? For fitting in? For being liked? Or for daring to live your truth, no matter the cost? Legacy is not about fame. It's about impact. And impact doesn't come from comfort. It comes from conviction, from choosing to live fully, even if it's messy, even if it's painful, even if it's lonely. You must become the kind of person who doesn't wait for conditions to be perfect, who doesn't need motivation, who creates movement from will alone. That's the will to power, not as domination, but as self-creation. You decide who you are. You decide what your life means. And you pursue it with ruthless consistency, not because someone told you to, but because your soul demands it. And now I ask you a dangerous question. What are you willing to destroy in order to become who you were meant to be? Are you ready to sacrifice comfort, approval, even happiness, if it means gaining the power to live your truth? There's a reason most people never rise. It's not because they're incapable. It's because they're unwilling. Unwilling to suffer. Unwilling to be alone. unwilling to let go of the illusion that life should be easy. But you're different. You wouldn't still be watching this if you weren't. You feel the call, the hunger, the fire. Nietzsche didn't want followers. He wanted fire starters. People who would set their old selves ablaze and walk into the unknown. People who would stop asking for permission and start demanding greatness from themselves. He wanted you to look in the mirror and see not a victim, but a force. Not a seeker of pleasure, but a creator of destiny. So don't chase happiness. That's for children. Chase power not to rule others, but to rule yourself, to master your thoughts, to dominate your doubts, to conquer your fear. Because once you do that, happiness may come, or it may not. But it won't matter, because you'll have something far greater. You'll have power, real power, and nothing will ever be the same again. So now you see it. The lie of happiness is exposed. The dream that was sold to you since birth, smile more, feel good, avoid pain, was a clever deception. But what comes next? Once you've torn down the illusion, what do you build in its place? That's where Nietzsche's philosophy hits the hardest. Because he doesn't hand you a blueprint or a 10-step plan. He throws you into the fire and says, now become someone worthy. Not for applause, not for validation, but because becoming is your nature. It is your responsibility, and it is your only true freedom. The will to power is not a concept you memorize, it's something you live. Every day, every decision, every thought is an opportunity to choose power over comfort, creation over consumption, truth over convenience. But here's the catch. Once you awaken to this path, mediocrity becomes unbearable. You can't go back. You can't unsee what you've seen. The trivial things that once distracted you no longer satisfy. You crave depth, intensity, transformation. And that craving, that hunger, is the beginning of your real life. Nietzsche warned that most people will retreat. They'll feel the pull of power, but the weight of it will scare them. Because power demands solitude. It demands silence. It demands standing alone when the crowd mocks you. But if you can withstand that, if you can remain rooted in your vision, you begin to feel something most people never will: inner sovereignty. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. A calm knowing that you are no longer a slave to the world's noise. You are guided by something deeper, fiercer, eternal. That's the true meaning of God is dead. Nietzsche wasn't celebrating chaos. He was warning us. When we lose external authorities, religion, tradition, morality, we must replace them with internal ones. We must become gods of our own lives. Not in ego, but in structure, in discipline, in will. You are the architect now. And if you don't build something sacred, something powerful, the emptiness will devour you. That's why so many people drown in nihilism. Because they've lost the old gods but haven't yet built the new self. So what does this new self look like? It's not a fixed identity. It's a becoming, a process of constant self-overcoming. You look at who you were yesterday and you ask, how can I go beyond this? Not because you hate yourself, but because you honor your potential. Nietzsche said the greatest individuals are not those who stay the same, but those who continually will themselves to become more. This is not about perfection. It's about intensity, about choosing evolution over comfort again and again. But let's not romanticize it. This path is brutal. You will face doubt. You will fail. You will fall into despair. But Nietzsche would smile at that. He would say, "Good. Now you're alive." Because despair is not the end. It's the beginning of transformation. It's the part of the journey where everything collapses so that something greater can be born. He called it the death of the old self. And if you can endure that death, if you can stand in the ashes without running, you'll find something sacred rising within you. Have you ever questioned why you suffer? Have you ever asked what your pain is trying to teach you instead of how to escape it? Nietzsche would urge you to listen, because every wound carries a message. Every scar is a symbol of survival. And if you trace them back to their source, you'll find the keys to your own power. That's what he meant by becoming your own physician. You don't wait for healing. You study your suffering. You dissect it. You learn its patterns. And then you use it as fuel to create something immortal. Let's be clear, when Nietzsche talks about power, he's not talking about greed or control. He's talking about life force. The energy that drives you to create, to challenge yourself, to say yes to difficulty. That is the will to power. It's the force that makes you get up at 5 a.m. to write the book, build the business, train your body, or confront your deepest shadow. It's not glamorous. It's not Instagrammable. It's real. And it's earned through sweat, solitude, and soul searching. This is why Nietzsche admired artists, warriors, and philosophers. Not because they were perfect, but because they lived on the edge. They dared to go beyond the ordinary. They didn't chase happiness. They chased the sublime, the terrifying, the transcendent. And in doing so, they created meaning where there was none. That's your task now. To stop waiting for meaning to arrive, and instead to become the meaning. But to do that, you must destroy parts of yourself. The coward, the liar, the addict, the victim. These identities might feel familiar, even comfortable, but they are not you. They are masks. And Nietzsche demands that you burn them, not gently, not gradually, but with full force, because only by destroying the false self can the true self emerge. The self that doesn't need to be happy to be fulfilled. The self that doesn't need to be understood to be true. The self that exists beyond praise or blame. If this sounds extreme, it's because it is. But so is life. So is reality. There is no neutrality in becoming. You're either rising or rotting, creating or conforming, saying yes to power or yes to decay. And every day, every moment, you're making that choice. Not just with your words, but with your habits, your thoughts, your attention. Nietzsche's philosophy is not something you study. It's something you live or ignore. And now we arrive at the final challenge. Nietzsche believed in the concept of eternal recurrence. Imagine that every moment of your life, every choice, every joy, every agony will repeat forever, over and over. Would you curse that fate, or would you embrace it? That is the ultimate test. If you can say yes to your life completely, without wishing to change a single moment, then you have reached the highest form of power. Not because your life is perfect, but because you have chosen to love it. All of it. That is Nietzsche's brutal truth. You must seek power, not happiness, because happiness fades. Circumstances change. But power, real, internal power remains. It deepens. It expands. It elevates. And it gives you the strength to face life on your own terms, and to stare into the abyss and say, I am not afraid, and to walk through fire and say, this is who I am becoming.